Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring this concept, this idea that it's not about you.
Oh, interesting.
And we're going to be looking at this through the work of Hale Dwoskin and the Sedona Method.
Okay.
We've got some excerpts from one of his YouTube videos.
Great.
And you're here to help me unpack it all, right?
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive in. Dwoskin, he has this way of taking like these really complex philosophical ideas,
Yeah.
and making them accessible, makes you think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you know me, always up for a good mind-bending session.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. So Dwoskin starts off, right off the bat, he's asking us to consider something that most of us take for granted.
Okay.
And that's our sense of self, our sense of me.
Right.
And he uses these examples from nature, these simple examples, like a tree growing or the sun shining.
Okay.
And he points out that these things, they don't seem to need a self to function, do they?
That's such a great way to start, you
Yeah.
know? Like, it really just kind of throws you right into the question.
Yeah.
Like, if a tree can just be a tree and grow without having some big existential crisis about its identity,
Right, exactly.
why do we as humans get so caught up in this idea of me?
Exactly. And he doesn't stop there. He goes on
Yeah.
to suggest that maybe this me, this sense of self,
Right.
right, that feels so central to our experience
Totally.
is actually, maybe it's a phantom, It's something that develops over time.
Oh, wow.
It's not something, that we're born with.
He even points out that, young children don't have that same sense of separation
Right.
that adults do. It's like as we grow and develop,
Yeah.
we create this me.
Right.
And then we start seeing everything through that lens.
Oh, that's interesting. So all this stress that I feel about my identity,
Yeah.
all the worries about like whether I'm good enough, smart enough, successful enough,
Yeah.
you're saying that could be based on like a false premise.
It could.
Like that's a game changer if you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, Dwoskin's suggesting that this constructed sense of self can lead to this feeling of being separate from the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that can cause like a lot of unnecessary suffering, It's we build these walls around ourselves and then wonder why we feel trapped.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a lot to unpack. I'm
Right.
already intrigued, but where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Right? Like if this me is more of a phantom than like a solid reality,
Mm-hmm.
what are we supposed to do about it?
Well, the first thing that Dwoskin really emphasizes is that trying to force this me to disappear, that's just going to lead to more frustration.
Right.
Like, it's like trying to pull yourself off the ground by your bootstraps, you know?
Yeah.
So he suggests like a more subtle approach.
Okay. I'm all ears. So tell me more.
He encourages us to just shift our focus from trying to like eradicate this me
Yeah.
to just being more aware of it.
Yeah.
He says like we should pause throughout our day, just notice what's happening around us and just examine like, do we actually need a separate you for those experiences to happen?
So instead of getting caught up in the story of me all the time, it's
Yeah.
more about like noticing that the story is happening.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. He asks, do you need a you to see?
Oh,
Do
interesting.
you need a you to hear, to feel, to think?
That's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
So if I'm not the doer, then who or what is?
Well, Dwoskin argues that there's just seeing, there's just hearing, there's just thinking, there's just feeling
Okay.
without this separate doer behind it.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's like we've added this extra layer of me onto everything.
Yeah.
And we don't even realize, like, it's optional,
So it's like we're constantly narrating our own lives.
Yes.
Instead of actually living them.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
And all that narration, all that focus on me
Yeah.
can create a lot of noise and distraction. So by noticing it, we can start to create some space, right?
Yes.
Between the experience itself and the thought that's like claiming ownership of it.
Exactly.
Okay, but that sounds great in theory,
Yeah.
but isn't it human nature to focus on me?
Well,
Like how do I realistically shift that focus?
it's not about, erasing the me completely.
Okay.
It's more about recognizing that maybe it's not as solid and all-encompassing
Yeah.
as we tend to believe,
Hmm.
Like think about a movie.
Okay.
The thoughts about the me, they're like the narrator,
Okay.
but they're not the action on the screen.
Right.
You're experiencing the whole movie.
The whole thing.
yeah, not just the narration.
So it's about like learning to see through the illusion, or at least recognizing it as an illusion.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get this.
Yeah.
But it requires a shift in perspective, for sure.
Definitely does.
Yeah, a big one.
Yeah, it's a big shift.
Yeah, for sure.
But even just even just considering the possibility that the me isn't the whole story can be really freeing, you know?
Yeah, I was trying that mindfulness exercise you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The one where you just like notice what's happening without judgment.
Right.
And it's surprising how quickly I got like hooked back into that me narrative.
Oh yeah, it's a habit. Yeah. We've been doing it for
our whole lives.
Our whole lives, yeah. But the more we practice just noticing those thoughts, those me thoughts.
Yeah.
The easier it becomes to kind of detach from them a little bit.
Okay.
It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
So Dwoskin, he's encouraging us to see this me as more of a commentator than the main event, right? Mm-hmm. But he takes it even further.
He does, yeah.
Right. He suggests that maybe life doesn't need a you to happen at all.
He does, yeah. He suggests that maybe life includes the appearance of you.
Okay.
But it doesn't actually need you to function, Like think about waves in the ocean, right?
Yeah.
The waves, they appear as these individual entities.
Yeah.
But they're not separate from the ocean itself, right?
Yeah.
They're just a different expression of the same water.
So you're saying like we're all just part of this larger energy flow?
Yeah, kinda, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
You think about it.
It is, and it really aligns with this idea, this concept of non-duality.
Okay.
That you find in a lot of Eastern traditions.
Yeah.
Non-duality basically suggests that there's no like fundamental separation.
Okay.
Between you and the world around you. It's like realizing that you're not in the universe, you are the universe.
Okay, but how do we reconcile that with our everyday experience of feeling like separate individuals?
It's not about denying the appearance of individuality, but it's more about recognizing that it might be a limited perspective,
Okay.
Like, imagine you're wearing one of those virtual reality headsets.
Okay.
Like, inside the headset.
Yeah.
You experience this world that feels so real, you know?
Yeah.
You can look around, you can interact, but then when you take the headset off, you realize, oh, it was just a simulation.
So you're saying our sense of self is kind of like that VR headset?
It's a good analogy, yeah.
Okay.
Our senses, our thoughts, they create this illusion of this separate me, but underneath that illusion, there's this deeper interconnectedness.
So that's a pretty radical shift in perspective.
It is.
And I have to admit, it's a little scary to think about like letting go of that sense of, like, what if I lose myself completely?
Yeah, Dwoskin reassures us that letting go of the me doesn't mean losing our individuality or our personality. Yeah. It's more about recognizing that the me isn't the whole story, Okay. It's like peeling away the layers of an onion.
Correct.
You're still an onion, but you're getting closer
to the core.
To the core, exactly.
So it's less about like erasing the me and more about expanding like my understanding of who I am.
Exactly.
But how does this actually play out in our lives?
Yeah.
Right? Like if we start to see through this illusion of a separate self, how does that actually like change our experience of the world?
Well, Dwoskin suggests that as we become less identified with this separate sense of self, we naturally become more open and connected to the world around us. Our sense of limitation starts to dissolve.
Okay.
And we start to experience a greater sense of freedom and ease.
It's like we're no longer trapped in our own little bubbles of me-ness.
Exactly. And that can have a really profound impact on how we relate to other people, how we approach challenges, how we experience life in general,
Yeah, like if you realize that, someone's criticizing you, it's not really about you.
Right.
Then it's easier to just like let it go.
Exactly.
Without taking it personally.
Yeah, and if you realize that everyone else is essentially dealing with their own version
of this me phantom,
a me phantom, it's like it's easier to have more compassion, more understanding
exactly
in your relationships.
It's a shift from feeling like you're constantly like striving to get something you lack to recognizing that, you know what, maybe we're already whole and complete.
Yeah, just as we are.
Just as we are. Okay, so I'm starting to see the appeal of this whole, it's not about you philosophy.
Yeah.
But it's still a big leap, right?
It is, yeah.
To go from understanding it to actually like living it. So what are some like practical steps we can take to actually integrate this into our daily lives?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
It is, yeah.
How do we take this heady concept that it's not about you and make it work in the real world, the world with deadlines and dirty dishes.
Yeah.
And, and that inner critic that just loves to chime in, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dwoskin, he emphasizes that this isn't about like reaching some kind of perfect state of egolessness, overnight.
Right.
It's more about like cultivating a new way of seeing things, a gentle curiosity about our own minds and our experiences,
So less striving for perfection, more mindful observation.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like in practice?
Okay, so it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Dwoskin, he encourages us to just notice what's happening in our experience without immediately slapping a judgment on it, good or bad, mine or not mine,
Okay.
You might be surprised how much of your mental energy is spent just categorizing and labeling everything.
So you mean instead of like instantly reacting to something, like let's say I'm stuck in traffic.
Right.
And I'm like, ugh, I hate traffic.
Yeah.
Or this meeting is so boring.
Yeah.
You're saying just notice the feeling of frustration or boredom.
Yes.
Without getting all tangled up in the story of like why I'm feeling it.
Exactly. It's like hitting the pause button on your usual like autopilot reaction and just observing what's arising in your mind and body.
Yeah.
The thoughts, the feelings, the sensations.
Okay, I can see how that could be helpful.
Yeah.
But honestly, like sometimes those thoughts and feelings,
they're
pretty intense.
They can be. Yeah.
How am I supposed to just like observe them without getting totally swept away?
Well, think of it like watching clouds drift by.
Oh, okay.
You notice them, you acknowledge their shape, their movement.
Yeah. But you don't try to like grab onto them or push them away.
Right.
You just let them come and go.
So you're saying my inner critic might just be a particularly persistent cloud formation.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe I should start charging it rent.
I'd love that. Yeah. Bringing a little humor into it.
Yeah.
Can definitely lighten the mood,
Yeah, for sure.
Remember, this is a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
Be kind to yourself. Be patient.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to laugh.
Right.
At the absurdity of it all,
Okay. That makes me feel a little less pressure.
Yeah.
So by noticing these thoughts and feelings, I'm starting to create some space.
Yes.
Between myself and the me narrative.
Exactly.
But then what? Like, what do I do with all that space?
Well, that space is where the real magic happens.
Okay.
It's where you can start to connect with a deeper sense of self.
Okay.
One that's not bound by the limitations of the me story. So if I'm understanding this right, it's not about erasing the ego. It's more about expanding my sense of self to include something bigger, something more interconnected.
Exactly.
And as I practice this, my actions will become less driven by the need to like protect or promote the me and more aligned with a sense of purpose and connection.
Exactly, yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And it makes you realize, like you were saying earlier, if everyone else is essentially wrestling with their own version of this me phantom.
Right.
It makes it a lot easier to have compassion and understanding.
It does.
In your relationships.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a shift from feeling like you're constantly competing with others to recognizing that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And that can be a really liberating experience.
Yeah, it's like moving from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today. From questioning the very nature of self to exploring like practical tips for letting go of the me narrative.
Absolutely.
This has been a truly mind-expanding deep dive.
It has.
I'm so glad we did this.
Me too.
Dwoskin, he leaves us with this really powerful question to ponder, and it's this. What if? What if there's already just one and everything is okay?
Wow.
It's a question that invites us to really step outside of our usual frameworks of thinking.
Yeah.
And to consider a more expansive view of reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something to chew on as you navigate the rest of your day.
Love it.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Till next time, keep questioning everything.